Hi, today I want to talk to you about a topic that's very close to my heart, and that is helping the poor. As Christians, we're often inclined to helping the poor in our communities, right? After all, isn't that the example that Jesus left for us to follow? Because it's not enough to just preach about the kingdom of God. We also need to show the kingdom of God through our good deeds. And there's many ways to help the poor. And I know for a fact that your church has more than likely a ministry already set in place, like a closet or a pantry. But what if I told you that there's a possibility that the way you're helping the poor can actually be hurting them more than helping? I know what you're thinking. How could I possibly be hurting someone that I'm helping? And the best way to explain this is by using the example of the sick person who goes to the doctor. The doctor can make two crucial mistakes. Number one is treating the symptoms instead of the underlying problems. Number two, misdiagnosing the underlying illness and prescribing the wrong medication. Either one of these mistakes can result in either the patient not getting better or even getting worse. And the same is when we try to help the people in poverty. If we only treat the symptoms, or if we misdiagnose the underlying problem, we will not improve their situation. And we might even make their situation worse. We can even hurt ourselves in the process. So, how do we know when we're helping correctly or not? Well, let me give you another example that I'm sure you've come across sometime in the past. And this is the example of the man who walks into your church asking for assistance to pay his electric bill. Many churches respond by helping this person out because on the surface, it looks like this person lacks resources. But what if this person's underlying problem is not having the self-discipline to keep a stable job? Simply handing this person money will only treat the symptoms and not the underlying disease. And more than likely will enable him or her to continue with his lack of self-discipline. The best solution for this case would be for the church to develop a relationship with this person and walk with him or her until he or she develops the gifts and abilities to avoid being in the same situation in the future. The best way to help a person living in poverty is by introducing them to God and by teaching them to have an actual relationship with God. That means walking with each person until they are living out their purpose in life and using the gifts and abilities that God gave to each and every one of us. We also need to teach them to live in relationship with others. God made us to know one another, to love one another, and to encourage one another by using the God-given gifts to fulfill our calling. Because not all poverty is created equal, when working with the poor, we need to be able to discern whether the situation calls for relief, rehabilitation, or development. And I will go over each of these briefly so you understand the differences. Relief is more of an urgent and temporary provision of aid. Relief is more than anything to stop the bleeding. So think of it as the Good Samaritan in the Bible. Rehabilitation begins after the bleeding stops, and it seeks to restore people and their communities. Lastly, development. It's a process of ongoing change that moves all the people involved, the helpers and the helped, closer to being in the right relationship with God, with self, with others, and with the rest of creation. And that is the best way to help people in poverty. If you're interested in knowing more about this, I would highly recommend the book that really helped me to learn how to help the poor. And this is the book called When Helping Hurts: How to Alleviate Poverty Without Hurting the Poor and Yourself. And it's written by Steve Corbett and Brian Fikkert. Thank you for listening.